Today's recipe calls for Spud Mackenzies, or also known as spuds or just potatoes. No matter what you call them, we're going to use these to make homemade tater tots. This is the third episode to my comfort food series, and making homemade tater tots sounds difficult, but these are super easy. So with that said, let's get started. So the first thing we're going to do is peel 4 medium-sized russet potatoes. You're going to peel your face off so fast that you're not even going to have to worry about your potatoes oxidizing, because that's how quick we're going to do it. You're going to peel off all the skin. Even though the skin holds all the nutritional value like fiber and vitamins, we're not going to need it for this recipe. And of course, give your potatoes a thorough clean before we peel them. You want to ensure that you get all that dirt and grime off. And it's best to peel your potatoes right into a bowl like this. This will make it a whole lot easier to throw away the potato skins. You can also use parchment paper or some saran wrap right on your work surface and peel into that. If your potato has any dark spots like this or small little impurities, go ahead and grab a paring knife and cut that small section out of your potato. Once you get everything peeled and the small impurities cut out, we'll go ahead and throw those potato skins away and anything else. Now that all of your potatoes are peeled and cleaned, we're going to throw them in a medium to large stock pot. Once everything's in the stock pot, you're going to cover your potatoes with cold water. You want to ensure that everything is submerged in our water. Now that your potatoes are covered with cold water, go ahead and throw it on a burner over high heat. Next, we're going to season our water with kosher salt, just like you would with pasta water, like what we did in our rigatoni olive vodka video. This will help season the potatoes. Next, we're going to throw 3 to 4 fresh thyme sprigs and 3 to 4 fresh rosemary sprigs and 2 to 3 crushed garlic cloves. This will help season the potatoes. This isn't a must, but it will add more flavor in the end. So if you don't want to, you can also skip this step or play around with more fresh herbs or seasonings if you choose. We're just trying to be a little bougie and extra for this. Once you have all of your seasonings of choice in your pot, we're going to bring this entire mixture up to a boil. We're going to parboil our potatoes for 7 minutes. So once your water hits a boil, that's when you should start your timer for 7 minutes. Parboiling just means that we're going to partially cook, but not cook all the way through. This will help ensure that we get a nice crispy tater tot in the end. Also, parboiling will help in the end cooking process, cutting down the time of how long they need to be fried or baked. This will help ensure that we don't burn anything and we get a nice, delicious tater tot. Now that our potatoes are parboiling, in a bowl we're going to have 5 tablespoons of all-purpose flour, and to that we're going to add 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 1 teaspoon of garlic powder, 1 1/4 teaspoons of kosher salt, and 1/8 teaspoon of cayenne powder. Once you have everything in your bowl, lightly whisk your face off to bring all of these ingredients together. This will be our binder to hold our tater tots together so they don't fall apart when we go to fry them or bake them. And as always, play around with the seasonings to find something you like. I like this mixture. I think it's a good base, but of course, play around with it until you find something that you enjoy. Once your timer has gone off, we're going to drain our potatoes. Once you get all the hot water drained off, you're going to run them under cold water. This will help stop the cooking process and make them cool down even faster. Now that you have everything drained and cooled, we're going to let our potatoes hang out for a few minutes to let them completely cool down to make them easier to handle. Now that your potatoes are completely cool and aren't too hot for your tender little mitts, we're going to start shredding them on a box grater. You're going to shred them on the side with the biggest holes like this. So shred all of your potatoes like you would if you're making hash browns. Ensure you don't get one of those little fingies, that would really hurt. And also, parboiling helps in this step. This will help ensure that our potatoes do not oxidize when we're shredding them. Now that you have all of your Spud Mackenzies shredded, we're going to take those over to the sink and rinse them under cold water right in our bowl. You're going to use your little fingies to agitate them. This will help rinse off any excess potato starch. This step is important because it'll help give us a crispier tot in the end. So you're going to do this about 2 to 3 times or until your water runs clear. So rinse them, strain them in a colander, and then rinse them again. And the last time you do this, ensure that you give your strainer a nice shake to get off as much excess water as possible. Now that you have your spuds strained and all of the excess starch rinsed off, we're going to throw them in a clean kitchen towel and take it back over to the sink to get everything out of your colander. Now that we're back at the sink with our potatoes, you're going to wrap your potatoes in a tight ball in our towel to help squeeze out any excess water. I honestly thought this was going to be more dramatic than what it was, but hey, what are you going to do? Do your best to get as much water out as possible, because when we go to fry them, water and oil don't mix, and that would cause a huge mess and a lot of problems, and we really don't want that. So hulk out and squeeze as much water as you possibly can. Now that you've strained your spuds, we're going to throw them on another clean kitchen towel and flatten them out into one nice even layer. Making them flat and one even layer will help them dry even faster. Now that you have all of your potatoes in one nice even layer, go ahead and throw another clean kitchen towel on top that's dry and lightly agitate and press down on your spuds just to help soak up some more of that water. You're going to let these hang out for about 5-6 minutes, which will give us enough time to make our homemade ketchup to eat with our tater tots. So I have a full video on how to make homemade ketchup, but I'll give you a quick snapshot. You're going to toast one 6-ounce can of tomato paste. Once it's toasted, you're going to add one 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes and give that a stir. Then you're going to throw in a few seasonings like cayenne, garlic powder, onion powder, and some sea salt. Oh, and then also you'll add some sugar to counterbalance all that acid from our tomatoes. Then you're going to cook this for about 20 minutes. Then after it's cooked for 20 minutes, you're going to thicken it up with some xanthan gum, which is all natural and is derived from plants. Then once everything is nice and blended and smooth and looks like ketchup, you're going to throw it in a mason jar for that sweet aesthetic look. You should definitely make this because it's 10 times better than Heinz or any of that other store-bought junk you could buy. Plus, you sound like a real if you make your own homemade ketchup and your own homemade tater tots. Like, come on, get out of town. Now that your ketchup is done, we're going to preheat our oven to 400 degrees. Then to our flour mixture, we're going to add a few churns of fresh ground black pepper. Forgot to add it earlier, so I'm adding it now. Then lightly whisk your face off to mix it in. Now that your spuds have had enough time to dry, we're going to grab a large mixing bowl and throw all of our shredded potatoes into it. Some of the shreds are going to stick to your towel, so go ahead and use your fingies to scrape it off and do your best to get all of it. Now that you have all of your shredded Spud Mackenzies in your bowl, we're going to start adding our flour mixture. We're going to do small bits at a time to ensure that we get everything mixed in thoroughly. If you try to throw it all in at one time, it may clump up into one giant mess, but we want to ensure that everything gets coated in our flour. I found it easiest to use my mitt, or you can also use a spoon. It's really up to you. Just ensure that everything gets thoroughly mixed before you add your next set of flour. Then add the last bit of your flour and give that a nice mix in. Now would be the perfect time to tell if your potatoes hold form and if they're going to stick together in a tater tot form. If not, then we'll go ahead and add more flour in the next step. My potatoes weren't really holding form, so I needed to add more flour. If you need to add more flour like I do, add in a teaspoon at a time of flour. You don't want to overdo it. Of course, give it a thorough stir and mix together. If your potatoes hold form in the beginning, go ahead and skip this extra step. So keep adding flour until you get something that sticks together and forms a tater tot. We're looking for something sort of like this. It sticks together nice and well and holds form and shape. Once you have that, you're good to go. Now that you have something that's going to hold shape, you're going to grab a half sheet tray and line it with some parchment paper. We're going to first start off with our baked tater tots. You can go for the nostalgic tater tot look, or you can do a heaping mess of potatoes as a tater tot. It's really up to you, but I wanted to keep that nostalgic look and feel, so I went with a tater tot form. So the best way to get that nostalgic tater tot look is to grab a small amount of potatoes in your hand and pull your fingers into your palm, almost like you're making a fist. Then you're going to use your middle finger and your thumb to press on the sides to keep it nice and round in that barrel shape. You don't want to clinch too tight because we don't want to make our tater tots too dense. And it helps if you kind of flip it and roll it in your hand so it keeps its form and shape. So you can run through all of your shredded potatoes and make baked ones, or you can do half baked and half fried. It's really up to you. Now that you have all of your tater tots shaped and ready to be baked, we're gonna slightly drizzle them with some vegetable oil. This will help make the outside nice and crispy while we keep the center nice and tender. Now that you've drizzled vegetable oil on all of your little tots, we're gonna sprinkle them with some sea salt. You can also use kosher salt, but we're trying to be extra and use some sea salt for this. Now this is what our little tots look like. Now we'll throw them in our preheated oven on the middle rack. Next we'll set a timer for an hour to bake our tater tots. I'd periodically check them every 20 minutes to ensure that they're not burning and they look nice and crispy. Now that our timer's gone off, this is the end result that we got. They're a little bit ugly, but they'll work. And we're gonna be extra and bougie, and we're gonna plate this with some style. So grab your homemade ketchup and your favorite plate and throw down a swoosh of ketchup. Then throw about 6 tater tots on your plate. Since these are baked, they're kind of more adult-ish, so we're gonna plate it nice. Then grab some fresh Parmesan Reggiano and microplane some cheese over your tots. Then throw a few parsley leaves, and there you go. There's a restaurant-style tater tot that would cost you probably like 900 bucks just because it looks so pretty. Alright, now that our baked tater tots are done, let's give them a shot. They're kind of aesthetically a bit ugly compared to the fried ones, but nonetheless, they still look good, so let's give them a shot. These baked tater tots are really good. They're super ultra crunchy on the outside, and the center is still nice and tender like a tater tot should be. They feel a little dense compared to the fried ones, but with them being baked, of course, they're going to be a little bit healthier for you, and they're not going to coat your mouth with a bunch of oil, which is nice. Definitely should have par fried them a little bit before I baked them, just because the outside on some of them got a little too brown or a little too dark, but you can always knock that off or just eat it as is. And the flavor on them is really good. There's just the right amount of salt, and that garlic and onion powder really come through. And the thyme and rosemary is pretty faint, which is nice. And overall, these are good. Can't wait to try the fried ones. Next, we'll start shaping our potatoes to make our fried tater tots. You want to go for about a medium-sized tater tot for your baked and your fried ones. You don't want to go too small or too big, because if you go too small, they'll burn. If you go too big, they won't cook properly. So do your best to keep everything the same size so that we get a nice even cook on everything. And I would guess maybe like 2 ounces, give or take. Nothing has to be precise with this. I know it's hard because I did my best not to be too stingy and make everything perfect. When forming your tater tots, you'll notice that the potatoes will start to stick to your hand, making it more difficult to make a shape. So in a bowl next to you, you should have some water, and this way you can rinse your hands off. I don't know why I thought my ball catchers would fit in a small bowl like this, but hey, what are you gonna do? Rinsing them off will help clean off any of the starch and flour, preventing any of the potatoes from sticking to your hand. I highly recommend having that bowl of water. It'll make your life a whole lot easier. So keep banging them out until you get everything shaped into a tater tot. Now that you have all of your spuds shaped, you're going to grab a Dutch oven or a heavy bottom pot, and you're going to fill it with about 3 to 4 inches of vegetable oil or any neutral oil that has a high smoke point. You're going to turn your heat on to high. We're going to bring our oil to about 350 degrees before we start frying off our tater tots. I'll leave a link in the description for an article that tells you how to dispose of fry oil at home. It's super helpful, so definitely go check it out. And of course, when you're frying anything at home, you gotta be super careful. This stuff is ultra dangerous and can cause a lot of problems, so be super careful. And I'll also leave a link in the description for how to fry properly or what to do if you have any issues. Now that your oil's hit 350 degrees, we're gonna start laying in our tater tots. It's best to use a strainer like this to lightly lay them in there. You don't want to toss them in there and get that bloop sound, because that'll just make a huge mess and a lot of problems. So you want to lay in one at a time on a strainer, because if you do multiple at one time, they will more than likely stick together and not get an even cook. You're going to cook about 4 to 5 tater tots at a time. You don't want to overcrowd your pan. Overcrowding your pan will in turn cool down the oil and prevent us from eating our tater tots any faster. So you're going to cook these for about 2 to 3 minutes or until they're nice and golden brown. It's more of a visual thing, so definitely keep an eye on them. Now that your little tots are nice and golden brown, we're going to take them out of our oil. We're going to slightly shake them to get any of that excess oil off. Then we're going to transfer them over to a wire rack to cool down. You're going to season them immediately with some sea salt or kosher salt. They will have a little bit of residual oil on them, so you want to season them immediately to help the salt stick. And this is what our tots look like, nice and delicious. And then we're going to keep it nice and nostalgic and grab our favorite kids plate with the 3 compartments, like we're back at elementary school with our lunch tray. And we're going to load that puppy up with as many tater tots as we can possibly fit, because you can never have too many. Once you have all of your tater tots stacked tall and nice and high, you're going to grab your homemade ketchup that's in a squeeze bottle and give yourself a nice fat dollop of ketchup. And then giggle a bit when it makes that fart noise, because you're never too old for that. And this is what it should look like. Alright, let's try our fried tater tots now. They came out really nice and golden brown and perfect, really. These things are super delicious. Sonic doesn't have shit on us. They're nice and salty, but not too salty. Then that onion powder, garlic powder, and that cayenne powder add a lot of flavor, which makes them really, really good. And that fresh thyme, rosemary, and garlic that we added at the beginning is pretty faint, but it helps add some brightness and some freshness to it all. Then the texture is so good. It's nice and crunchy, but tender on the inside like a tater tot should be. The only downside is the oil coats your mouth, but when you eat it with the homemade ketchup that's nice and sweet and acidic, it helps cut through all that richness. And then eating it off of a kid's plate brings back a lot of nostalgic feels and makes them taste a whole lot better. Alright, that's it for today's video. This recipe is pretty easy, there's not a whole lot to it, and you can make these tater tots any which way possible. Maybe add some bacon and some cheddar cheese, or maybe some fresh roasted green chilies, make it a spicy boy tater tot, or make your tater tots and then make that bacon jam from the other video and top your tater tots with that. That sounds delicious, maybe not so good for your heart. So you should definitely subscribe and keep up with this comfort food series. There's a ton of good food coming your way. And if you enjoyed today's video, give it a like, and also find me on Instagram at TaylorMakes92. I'm gonna run to the store, maybe grab some more kids plates and one of those airplane spoons. That'll probably make my cereal taste a whole lot better. So with that said, we'll see you on the next one. Alright, now that our baked tater tots are done, let's give them a try. Now that our baked tater tots are done, let's give them a shot. To me, they're kind of aesthetically, no, they're pretty ugly. So these things are ultra crunchy. These things are good. Throw the bacon jam on it from the other video, you know, the one I'm talking about, you know, that one. I'm hungry. Hungry and over this. Okay. Alright, that's it for this video. These aren't hard to make at all. Now you're a pro, you can make tater tots. And I think I'm gonna go cough and mess it all up.